Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this very, very special evening. I would like to start off by thanking the United Task Force and Befrat Dr. Faye Zakheim for making sure to put this event together, and all the members of the coalition that really give of themselves day and night to help Klal Yisrael, over 40 member agencies dedicated towards the importance of what we're about to discuss and many, many other important areas that Klal Yisrael address on a regular basis. I also want to thank Torah Masorah and Petach for their help and participation in making this event possible. Very interesting topic that we were asked to put together. And this event was actually asked by parents. They're the ones that reached out and requested it. And the reason why it's called riding the roller coaster of schools today is because that is what many of us are seeing. But as we all know, we all have to remain positive, and we all have to understand that we have to be there for our children, especially in these tumultuous times. While it might be difficult, we have to remember that our children learn from us. And while it's very, very difficult to be running homeschooling and sometimes two parent families that both have to work, someone has to stay home, we have to remember that at the end of the day, it's for our children. And as long as we keep that part in mind, it'll make it much easier going forward. And, we get these calls a lot. And, when children hear parents complaining about it, it makes for a very bad experience that the children have to have, because they're the ones that have to be in school. So it's extremely important to be positive about it. Now, I speak as a parent. I had the same situation. I mean, Baruch Hashem, where I live, has already switched out of being a red zone, but it's the same issue. There was a time that we were not sure what was going to be, and we had to address it with our children, my wife and I, and explain what the problems are. And this is the reality of the world we're living in today. And one of the things that's really important is that we as parents cannot be scared to have these conversations with our children. Very often parents think that if they try to hide something or change something, it's going to have a different factor. But we can't do that. We have to remember that we're the parents. We're here to help do what we can to give our children the best possible chinuch. And tonight, we have two people that are very well known in the world of chinuch and education. We have Dr. Joel Rosenshein, whose resume spans many years of being involved in so many organizations, chinuch, psychology, and really someone who's given his life for so many others and still does so as a senior member of the United Task Force, as a person who parents and educators still reach out to. So we're going to get to hear from him. And we have Rabbi Dovid Morgenstern, or if I can be so bold and say Reb Dovid, someone who I also grew up with, spent many years with, who is the Menahel of the upper elementary school at Yeshiva Darchei Torah, and is also one of the people in the leadership in the Torah Masorah program for Mashgichim, an amazing project from Torah Masorah. And we're going to have a great opportunity to hear from these two. What's also important is, and I say this before we move on, is as parents, we need to have all the tools and all the skill sets available to us that we can remain calm during these trying times. So I'd like to take this opportunity to state that the United Task Force had an amazing opportunity to partner with Amudim and developed 5 videos in a series that can be seen at amudim.org/relax, amudim.org/relax. And these were actually funded in part by the New York City Council, just to give techniques for parents to have when you feel times are tough. We like to provide it. So that's a big thank you to the United Task Force. And what I would like to do now is I would like to turn over to Rabbi Dovid Morgenstern, and let's hear what he has to say. Good evening, Rabbi Morgenstern. How are you?
Good evening, Tzvi. Good evening. Thank you very much and welcome. Once again, a special Yasher Koyach to Dr. Zakheim for putting this all together, for always being on the forefront of the incredible synergy and pooling together all of Klal Yisrael's resources to help our children. Tzvi, you really, you said a lot in your introduction. I want to share with you a Gemara in Bava Basra, Daf Ches Amud Beis, where the Gemara says the following. The Gemara talks about a pasuk in Yirmiyah, where the pasuk says, Kayamar Hashem, Asher lamaves, lamaves, Vasher lacherev, lacherev, Vasher larav, larav, Vasher lashvi, lashevi. There's a pasuk that talks about cherev, rav, and shvi. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Vam Rabbi Yochanan, Kol ha'ma'ucher b'pasuk zeh, kasha mechaverei. As the pasuk moves along, the pasuk is progressing with what is more shver, with what is more difficult, what is more kasha. So it starts with cherev, a sword that comes to a city. Then it moves on to rav, which is hunger. And then worse than that is shvi, being taken into captivity. Using this yisaid, Svarim write that if we look at our tefillah and hashkivenu and ma'ariv each night, we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, v'haser me'aleinu, remove from us, oyev, dever, v'cherev, v'rav, v'yagain. Remove from us the oyev, the enemy. And then what's worse is dever, which we are now for plague. And even worse than plague is cherev. And worse than cherev is rav, is famine. And then it ends with v'yagain. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, v'haser me'aleinu yagain. Yagain is woe, it's anguish, it's sadness, it's despair, it's misery. That the worst thing that we can have is to be miserable and sad, that we can feel despair. And that's really what the focus of tonight is all about. We're turning to ourselves. We're going through a very rough tekufa. Right now, we have children that are off schedule. We have, unfortunately, Yidden and Klal Yisrael have been nifter and others are sick. And we are mispaled that they should all have a refuah shalema. Teachers are out of sorts. Rabbeim are out of sorts. Parents are out of sorts. Our children are out of sorts. Schedules are in upheaval. Schools are closed. And we have so much going on and there's so much confusion. How do we manage that? On one hand, it's very, very sad what the parents are going through. A person came to me this past Shabbos, and he shared with me that his very wonderful sixth grader is no longer himself. He's not motivated to learn. He's not motivated to get on to whatever system it is that they're learning within his yeshiva. And there's siblings that are fighting. And this is undue stress that's taking place in the house. Before Sukkot this year, a number of children, Rabbeim, I heard this from a yeshiva that was using Zoom. I heard this from a yeshiva that was using the telephones. The children, as they were leaving, and there was some discussion of there may not be yeshiva after Sukkot. And the kids that happened to be on a Zoom in a yeshiva that was using Zoom, they said, Rabbi, we are not getting onto Zoom ever again. That was their words. And the kids in the other yeshiva, where there was talk about the telephones, they said, Rabbi, we are not logging on to those telephones. What's missing is the connection. Children want to connect with their educators. They want to connect with their Rebbeim, with the Mechanchim in their lives, with the Moras, with the Rebbeim. And that is what was lacking during this tekufa of this long distance learning. But how do we manage that? How do we approach this? There's a beautiful thought from the legendary Mechanech, the great Rosh Yeshiva, Harav Yaakov Bender, who I have the privilege to serve under as a Menahel in the Yeshiva. By Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu said, V'lo shamu el Moshe, Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them there's going to be a geula, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to save them. He says, V'lo shamu el Moshe, they didn't listen to Moshe. Mikoitze ruach, u'me'avoda kasha, from the shortness of breath, u'me'avoda kasha, and from the difficult work. Rabbi Bender says, take a look. kaitzer ruach, shortness of breath, inability to breathe, and then avodah kasha, which could mean depression as well, kaitzer ruach. Really, it should say avodah kasha. First, there was difficult work, and that led to a shortness of breath. So says Rabbi Bender, if a person is feeling kaitzer ruach, if a person is feeling that things are not working out, that there's a shortness of breath, that there's tsar, that things are difficult, then everything and anything will be avodah kasha. But when you're under control and you're in control and you're calm, then nothing seems like avodah kasha. A beautiful thought in how to view adversity. Parents and educators, we need to be positive. We need to be as much as positive as possible. And there was a phone call that took place a few weeks ago. There was a yeshiva that a number of boys had to quarantine, and they had a conference call together with the heads of school and the parents. And there was one parent that was railing at the yeshiva, really upset. The parent says, we're embarrassed. Our child was exposed to corona, and now we have to quarantine, and now we have to tell our shul. It's such a busha for us. What was going on over here, and how could we met? Really going on and on and on. And then there was one person on the call, another parent in the class, and this person said, excuse me? And this is a person who says, those that know me know that I never speak up. But I'd like to share with you something. My family, he said, we just went through 3 weeks of quarantine. And I want to tell you, we cherished every moment. We cherished every minute. He says it's all how you present it to your children. And here was someone that went through, and that silenced the other person, and they heard very clearly that yes, it can be overwhelming, but how do you present it, and how do you view it, and how do you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish? Right now, we are all being faced with our legacy of how will we look back at these times. We can't write the script. We can't say who is going into quarantine and who is getting sick and which school is open. We can't control what happens, but we can control how we react. And it's very difficult. The pressure is mounting, but it's time to do a reset and to recognize that this is now our children are going to look back at these times, and we will look back at these times, and we will have to reflect on what was the message that we gave. We can control how we react, and that is something our children will take with us. Some points that need to be covered is that children are out of sorts, so we need to give them some measure of stability whenever possible. So some people might think that they have to structure the entire day, that the entire day will need a huge amount, bursts of stability, some structure. I tried to reach, in the height of the pandemic, I tried to reach a friend of mine. And I called a very important person, and I called him, but he usually picks up the phone. So he answered. 2 hours later, he gets back to me. I said, what happened? He says, don't you know? Tuesday night is game night. This is in the pandemic. All the kids, they played a game that everyone of all the ages was able to play. And he says, we don't stop that for anything. He had a vision. He had a mission. He said, how are we going to get through this? And it made a rush on his kids. They saw that despite the hardships, they were looking to have enjoyable time together. You know what also we have to explain to our children? It's okay not to know. It's okay not to know what's going to be. When will our schools open? When will the shuls open? When will we be able to go back to normal? We don't know, but that's okay. And somehow we have to understand the child's experience. We have to validate them, and we have to try to put ourselves in their shoes and view things through their eyes. They're not getting together with their friends if the school is closed, and how difficult this is for them. Validate, communicate, spend time with our children. But how are we doing? Anyone that's ever tried to feed a bottle to a baby knows that when we're a bundle of nerves, I don't think I've done that too often, but when we're a bundle of nerves and we have something where we have to go, we have to take care of something, the baby feels it. and the baby cries, the baby is not calm. What we need to do is we need to take care of ourselves in order to help our children. We will hear from Dr. Rosenshein a little later, some very practical, good practical tips on this. The Talmud Rebbe, a couple once came to him, and they were having guilt if they needed a vacation for all the right reasons. And they still felt guilty. Can they leave their children? The children would have been taken care of very respectfully, very responsibly. But they said, we need a break. The Talmud Rebbe with his Chachma said, a gesunte Mama kann man haben gesunte Kinder. A gesunte Tate kann man haben gesunte Kinder. If the mother will be gesund, if the father will be gesund, then they will be able to take care of, and the children will be healthy as well. Those of us, it's been a while that I've been on a plane, but we all remember that announcement that in the event of a sudden loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks will automatically descend from the ceiling. Grab the mask and pull it over your face. If you have a child that's traveling with you, secure your mask first and then assist them with theirs. That doesn't sound the way we do things. We take care of our children. Why would we take care of ourselves first? And I think we all now understand that in order for us to be proper caregivers, we have to have a proper mindset. We have to be in a situation that we are calm and stable, and our children feed off of that. During Hurricane Sandy, a family shared with me that they were in Muncie, no power, no electricity. It's before they had a generator, just a couple of candles giving light and whatever heat. So, no microwave. The mother went ahead and said, okay, kids, they huddled around the kitchen table and said, let me show you something. And she poured some oil into a pot. And she said, let me show you how to make popcorn. I said, popcorn? The microwave doesn't work, Ma. This is how we used to make popcorn. And she put the oil, no popcorn maker, and she put the oil in, and she went ahead and the kids still talking about it today, how they played a game, how during that very dark time, they learned about making popcorn and fond memories were made. Our children feed off of us. And as there's so much stuff going on in the house, as there's so much sibling fighting, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation. The great Mechaneches, Rabbi Trenk, the wife of the great tzaddik Reb Dovid Trenk, she is an expert in parenting. And a couple once came to her, and they shared with her the problems that they were going through. And they said, our son, he's a monster. He's a terror. He's tearing up the family, and he's starting up with his siblings. And they went on and on and on about how difficult, and it was a very, very difficult situation. Mrs. Trank let them talk. And then Mrs. Trank said, can I ask you to please step outside for 2 minutes? I'll call you back in 2 minutes. They came back inside, and Mrs. Trank said, okay, I'd like you now to imagine that I am a head counselor of a camp here in Lakewood, and I have one slot left, and there are 50 applicants, and you want to get your child, your son, into this camp. What would you say? Says, my son, our son, he's incredible, he's responsible, he's geschmack, he's talented, and they went on and on talking about the beauty of their son. And she said, okay, you didn't say any of those things to me before when you came in here. And due to all the things going on, I wonder if you're even telling that to your child. We need to make sure that we're not looking at our children only in this disciplinary role. We have to take a step back and remember the beauty of our children and remember who they are, but not for the actions that's going on right now in the home. There's a Arachayim in last week's Parsha. I heard this pshat from Rabbi Eliezer Braun, who is an expert Rebbe that works in the resource room in Darchei Torah. Pasuk says, "Vayishlach Noach es yadai." The Yaina needed the Yaina wasn't able to have Manayach, to rest. So Noach stuck his hand out of the teva. The Darchei says that the Yaina, the bird, was Ayefa was very tired. Laimatza Manayach. And Noach understood this. He says, maybe the bird ein lakayach la'uf yoser, doesn't have the ability to fly any further. And the bird will fall into the water. So therefore, Noach sent out his hand and he brought the Yaina back in. So Rabbi Bruin says, how far did he extend his hand? How far was Noach's reach? A foot, 2 feet? How far did his arm reach? So Rabbi Bruin says it must be that the shot in the Archaim is that when the Yaina felt that there was somebody reaching out, that Yaina was caring, and there was someone rooting for that bird, that gave the Yaina the ability and the strength to fly home. And that's what we can do with our children when they feel that we are looking out for them and rooting for them. Of course we are, but they need to hear the language, they need to feel it, they need to see it. My shver was Rav Meir Zlotowitz, Zechraynu Livracha. And there's a story about him that when he was between marriages, he had 3 little children in his home. And he was going through a very rough time. So he went to his Rabbi, the great Gaon Reb Moshe Feinstein. And he traveled to the Lower East Side and he couldn't get in. He saw the Rebbitzin, there was a Din Torah, something was going on. And the Rebbitzin noticed it, but it was just not possible to get to Reb Moshe. That night, as Rabbi Zlotowitz was trying to put those children to sleep, 3 little kids running around, bedtime was not going well. There was a snowstorm, and he hears a knock on the door. And there, lo and behold, was the Paisik Hadar. Rav Moshe Feinstein came to his door. And Rav Moshe came in, and Rav Moshe helped him tuck in each of those kids and put them to sleep. How much my shver got from that visit by Rav Moshe. The feeling that Rav Moshe cared, the feeling that Rav Moshe was looking out for him. And that is something that everyone benefits from when they feel that someone is caring for them. During this time, reach out to someone, call a friend, cheer them up, tell them you're thinking about them. It'll go a long way. And you know what? When you cheer up somebody else, it will cheer you up as well. And remember that the children, the way we react, that's how they react. They hear us kvetching, they're going to kvetch too. We need to remember that we are on stage and we need to help our children. And we need to stabilize ourselves and bring out stability into their lives with a little bit of structure and a lot of positivity. See the positive in our children and make sure we express it. This past Shabbos, I had the opportunity to daven by Rav Binyamin Cohen in Flatbush. And he told over the following mashal. There were 3 soldiers that were at the front. Bullets were flying. And 2 of the soldiers were standing with their rifles behind protection, and they were shooting back at the enemy. And there was one guy, he was just on his cell phone. And he says, it's pretty serious here. I'm on the front, and there's a lot going on. This is really dangerous. One of the soldiers with the rifle, hey, buddy, hey, would you put down your phone? Stop talking. Pick up a rifle and join the fight. And his message was, stop talking about it. Pick up a sefer. Do something. And he said, I'm that buddy calling out to you. Our children are hearing us and they're watching us. We have to not just talk about what's going on, but we need to do something for Klal Yisrael. If the family together can say a kapitel Tehillim, each one their own kapitel, do something for Klal Yisrael, not just to talk about it. And another thing we need to do, because our children are watching and they're learning from us, is we need to be respectful. There's a lot of energy and a lot of emotion. Yes, mask, no mask, antibodies, no antibodies. this, open, close. We need to be respectful of everyone's position. And the children will learn from that. And that is something that we can give them that will define how we react. And that will be part of the legacy when they look back at this time. So tonight's talk was called Riding the Roller Coaster of Schooling Today. A roller coaster is something that has dips and turns. You think you're going one way, and then there's a sudden drop. My son always says to me, he says, I don't understand why people wait online for an hour or two to go on a roller coaster just to get nauseous, but that's not for now. But here, the roller coaster, you think you're going this way, you think you're going that way, and then it drops. But people go on roller coasters because when we get on a roller coaster, the harness gets into place. There's that safety bar, there's that security, and there's that seatbelt. And we know with that despite whatever happens, we will be okay. We need to convey this to our children. We have a harness. We are Biyad Hashem. And whatever happens, we are totally, totally Biyad Hashem. And He is taking care of us. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Morgenstern, for those really beautiful words. And, it reminds me, as we talk about the importance of parenting and where the parent's position is. So I remember hearing when I was learning in Muncie by Rabbi Tzal Radinsky, there was a whole discussion about an entire generation that after the war was trying to rebuild Klal Yisrael, and then many people, ended up going different angles. And there was a term that was very often used back then. And that term was Oivi Shvertz Zanayid. Oh, how difficult it is to be a Jew. And with that negativity, the message that was given to the next generation was unfortunately one that was carried on. Our job as parents is to continue to increase the positivity. Whether it's going to be schooling by phone, schooling by Zoom, different types of settings, we have to be there and be a positive reinforcement for our children and make sure that we can make the best of these situations. I would like now to please honor and introduce Dr. Joel Rosenshein, a legend in the field, so we can hear from him before we switch to the Q&A. Dr. Rosenshein?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Morgenstern, United Task Force, for giving me this opportunity to tell you all the things I don't know, because none of us really know. If we think we know, we're fooling ourselves. Whether it's the psychologists, the Rabbeim, the Mechanchim, the parents, we're all in this together. Before I agreed to go and speak to you and give you all these answers, I decided to get a ride with a friend of mine, Tzemach Glenn, who was going to visit Rab Shmuel Kamenetsky. And I asked Rab Shmuel, what should we talk about? How do we start a conversation? How do we get the parents and the Mechanchim and everybody on the same page? Rab Shmuel's answer was, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. We all have to work together. We know there are different opinions. We know there are different views of what we're supposed to be doing and what we're not supposed to be doing. That leads to all kinds of discussions, which are okay, but arguments, no. How do we bring shalom between parents, between the parents and the children, the parents on the neighbors and the neighbors? Maybe this is the opportunity to make up with every person you wanted to make up the last few Rosh Hashanahs and Yom Kippurs, and you didn't do it yet. Now is the time to do it. We don't come tonight to give you all answers, because if I said I knew all the answers, you would all be laughing at me. Just a few suggestions about how to get through the day, how to work along with everybody in these terrible and difficult times. It's an amazing thing. Most of us go over the Parsha. And this week we're reading Lech Lecha. Did anybody ever stop and think, what did Avram think? Hashem says, Lech lecha mi'artzecha mi'moladetecha mi'beis avicha el ha'oretz asher areka. Where am I going, Rebbeinu Shalom? Somehow he doesn't ask the question. He doesn't even tell him the name of the country. How did Avram do this? How did Avram accept this? We are living, you'll excuse me, in the flesh pots of America, and we have some problems today. We definitely have some problems. How does it compare if the Rebbeinu Shalom comes down tomorrow and tells all of us, get out of your homes, El ha'oretz asher areka? I know you're all waiting to go to Eretz Yisrael. We all talk about that, but we don't want to land up in the Mabarot waiting for a place to put our heads in Eretz Yisrael. We don't even think about that. But listen, we're going to read the Parsha this week. So if you keep this thought in your mind and you begin to think like this, then you'll be able to get through the day or the days that we're facing, which are so difficult. They are difficult. Nobody can say they are not. We are facing many issues in the day, but if we just think, the Rebbeinu Shalom isn't telling me to leave America yet. And we want to stay in America, some of us. Some of us are going Taka. Some are going to Muncie. Some are going to the mountains. Some are going to the Long Island, so it's not a red zone. That's okay. However, even that presents all kinds of difficulties. Only with flexibility can we begin to function on a daily basis. So I'm going to discuss a few hints to get through the day. And one of the most important things for myself, for my family, was as soon as this thing started, to keep a schedule. I happen to be an early riser. I did not change 1 minute of that early rising. Even though we were locked up for 3 months, I managed to keep my schedule. Why? Because I knew that my schedule would keep me somewhat normal. Every one of us has a different schedule. Whatever that is, try to keep it. Try to make it more flexible. Try to work with it, but at least have a schedule. Write it down if you have to. It may get destroyed during the day. It probably will. You may have to go pick up some kids from some place that just got closed or whatever went on there. However, have the beginning of a schedule to beginning to work with this. When you have this kind of a schedule, then you have to have a lot of flexibility in the schedule. We know things will begin to happen during the day. But remember, when you lose it, the kids lose it. They are looking to us as parents, to us as mechanchim, to us as principals, to get us through this terrible situation. And some of the kids say things that upset us, no question about it. Some of them are very wise. Some of them are very scared. We have to show them that we can handle this. And when we do lose it, and we will, that's not the end of the world. The end of the world is if you don't say, sorry, kids, I lost it. Let's get back together. Being able to say that to your children gives you respect in their eyes, not the opposite. When you make a mistake, acknowledge your mistake, and we'll move on. But it also presents a lot of good opportunities. You know, some of the mothers used to bake with their daughters or teach them how to bake. Some of the kids used to learn how to cook. You know, maybe there's a time to make a cooking class sometime during the day. Oh, Dr. Rosenshein, you're being ridiculous. Cooking class? I can hardly get through the day. But if you bring that in as a possibility, the kids will feel relaxed. It could be a half hour of the day. It could be an hour, depending on the day, depending what's going on. But they'll look back at this as an opportunity. Wow, Mommy and I are baking together. Daddy and I are learning how to cook together. Or maybe if you do happen to have a home that allows it, we're doing a little marshmallow cookout in the back. Whatever it is that you can create to give the kids some relaxation in all of this tumult. The tumult is not going away too fast. But just keep thinking about this. One of the things I've taught people for the last couple of years, and I teach myself, is to say a very important pasuk, which we all recognize, but how many of us really think about it? Hakol b'dei shemayim chutz miyirah shemayim. What does it mean, Hakol B'dei Shemayim? You can say that God runs the world. We know God runs the world. If we don't believe it, look, he gave us this virus. He brings us a second roll, a third roll of it. We know he runs the world. But Hakol B'dei Shemayim. Well, how many of us are ready to admit that we have a little fender bender? It's not an accident. Nothing is an accident. We have a challenge here. It's not an accident. Whether Rebbeinu Shalom is angry because we were talking in shul, whether he's angry because we weren't davening with kavana, whether he wasn't angry at us, he really was angry at the Chinese, but we happened to get it over the head. We don't know the Rebbeinu Shalom's thoughts. But certainly we have to say, Hakol B'dei Shemayim, chutz miyiras Shemayim. Well, how do we do this, chutz miyiras Shemayim? So when you're really beginning to lose it, sit down on a chair. Most comfortable chair you have. Not one of those leaning back ones that I love to sit in. Well, a regular chair, like I'm sitting in now. Put your arms on your two sides. Hold the chair very tight. Stiffen your entire body. I'm doing it right now if you can see me. Close your eyes and say to yourself, Hakol B'dei Shemayim chutz miyiras Shemayim. I'm going to relax my right arm, starting with my pinky, and then my fourth finger, and slowly do your whole arm, and then your left arm, and then your leg, and you will feel. Take a deep breath, and you will feel relaxed. And then you will say, okay, I feel better now. You can do this 5-6 times a day. Another idea that everyone's going to laugh at, but it's not a bad idea. You know, when I and my Rebbetzin went to Eretz Yisrael at the beginning many years ago, everything in Yerushalayim used to close from 1 to 3. All the stores closed. Everything was shut down. Siesta time. You know, maybe it's time to put in a 20-minute, a half-hour siesta time. I know the kids don't want to go to sleep. What are you talking about? You're nuts. Well, don't forget, Erev Pesach, you try to put them to sleep. And you get 7 to doze off. They don't have to sleep, but everybody will take time out, especially when things are getting really rough. They came home from wherever they were, if they were on Zoom, if they were with the Rabbi or they weren't, or the things turned out wrong. And now let's all take a 20-minute, a half-hour nap. Yes, some of them will resist it, some of them will laugh at it, but you can build it into the schedule. And slowly but surely, the children will accept it. And they will see it as a time to really get back together. And certainly the mothers and the fathers who are struggling through the day will also. Getting back to different ideas to bring in, some of our children would have loved to learn to play the guitar, to learn to play around the piano we have in the house. This may be a time to build in some music time during the day, whatever music you like, whether it's Avram Fried, whether it's some of the newer guys, whatever it is. Bring music into the house. After the learning time is over and there is time for relaxation, play some music. It doesn't have to be classical music like some of us love, but it can be some Jewish music. And some of the girls may want to dance with mommy, and you make a little dance. Wow, mommy, we can dance, but that world is falling apart. Right now, we are dancing. Right now, we are not falling apart. Right now, we're working together to bring relaxation into our home and into our minds. These little hints can go a long way. Also, every hour on the hour, we have a 3-minute relaxation time. No matter what we're doing, 3 minutes. If you can do the longer ones, fine. If you can't do the 3 minutes. A very important topic, which I discuss with many parents, and I get very upset about it. Yes, some of us can afford maids once a week, twice a week. Children have not learned anymore to make their own beds. They haven't learned to put away the laundry. They haven't learned that they can do stuff in the house. Mommies say, oh, it's easier for me to do it myself than to fight with them. Well, maybe now is the time to say to all the kids, look, there's a lot going on. I want everybody to take care of their beds in the morning, and it doesn't have to be a perfect bed. How many people go up into the bedrooms to examine your bedrooms? Just tell the children to put the blanket on, put the pillow on straight, make it easy. When you do the laundry, you give them their pile, they have to put it away. Don't have to check on them. Don't make it into a monitoring. But however, if they do a good job, you'll give them a reward, whatever that reward may be. Children love rewards. One of the most important principles of education, which is necessary for everybody, even for people who are over 70 and 80. Reward works better than punishment. You gotta start with reward. If you're gonna build in any one of these systems I'm talking about, the children have to hear that you appreciate it. Whether it's a little extra candy, you can even bribe them with a quarter. You know, people say, you telling me to bribe my child to behave? No. We all work for money. Money runs the world, let's be honest. Children get a 25-cent reward, they will move on it. Stop feeling that it's a bribe. Those of you who went and learned about Thorndike, the Pavlovian dog, should remember that when that dog learned how to salivate over the piece of meat, if you don't remember it, look it up. If you don't know about it, just put it on your, I don't know, everybody Googles today, it's us, if it's mutta, whatever. Go on, look up what Pavlov taught us with that dog. It's true for everybody from day one. When the child is born, he needs the reward of mommy, or she needs the rewards of mommy, and it's true till death do us part. Use that. It's very, very important. I heard Rabbi Mansour give a drasha last week on Parshas Noach, and he said, you know, you all expect me to talk about this part of the parsha, that part. I'm going to talk about the fish. The fish? What about the fish? Well, we all eat fish on Shabbos. Why do we eat fish on Shabbos? Very good kasha. Why are you all eating fish? It's not brought in the Machaba. It's not brought in the Ramah. The Magen Avraham mentions it, and the Mishnah Berurah mentions it. Where did this come from? And why are the fish getting the reward that we're eating them on Shabbos as part of the big mitzvah? Well, what was different about the fish and the mabul? The difference was that they were under the ocean, and none of them died, and they were hidden from the whole trouble. The animals, everybody knows, they became like the people. And they did the ra, just like the people. But the fish did not. They were hidden. And therefore, they got rewarded that became part of the mitzvah of Shabbos, said Rabbi Mansour. And there's some Rashis that indicate some of this. If we can learn to be the fish in the sea who are doing our job in our own homes, together with our Rabbeim, who are also suffering from this whole thing. Believe me, the Rabbeim are having a very difficult time. And the teachers are having a difficult time together with the children. Of course, the children expect the Rabbeim to always be laughing. And we know there are certain Rabbeim who will always be able to handle it, and others of them have pressure from their homes, from everything. Mommy, Daddy, remember this. They're also suffering. They're also having problems. So cooperate with them with all you can. Follow the leads of your schools. Different schools, they tell you tomorrow is this, next week is that. This became a red zone, that became a purple zone. That, whatever zone it is, it's the Rabbeinu Shalom zone. Work with the people. Work with whoever you have to work in order to bring peace, and so we get out of this. I have a lot to say, but I'm getting a signal here that I have only 2 minutes left. I want to buy another hour of time to get through the time here. Okay. If you live somewhere where you can take a little drive, go down to some water. What I did during the first 2-3 months, when we were so locked up, is I got in my car and I drove down to the bay, or I drove down to the ocean and sat there for a half hour and relaxed. The water is very relaxing. Just an idea. It may not work for you. Something else may work. Maybe just putting the kids on the swings if you have them in the back for 10 minutes works, depending upon the weather. But always make relaxation times. Go shopping when you can. Now I think most of us know how to wear the masks and go shopping. So give this as a reward to the kids. Let them pick up something. You could spend $1. Older people, you could spend $10. Don't go crazy. Don't go spending all the money and make your husbands angry. Just do a little bit and get the thing rolling. Children need to know that mommy and daddy are in command. They need to know that when you're confused, you explain to them why you're confused. Don't be afraid to talk to them. A question I've been asked all the 70 years, 60 years of my practice is, if somebody dies in the family, a grandma, a grandpa, should we take them to the funeral? The children are 8, 9 years old, even 7, depending upon their level, and you don't take them to the funeral, they think they did something wrong. They think they didn't give respect to grandma, grandpa, and they become guilty. They have to go there. They have to be part of the feeling of what's happening in the family if we're sitting avelis. We have to explain it to them. We are all a little bit nebuch avelim, whether it's in our own family, whether it's in somebody we know. You know, my children fight with me because they say you're only a grandpa, you can't invite everybody to the weddings like you used to be the father and mother. One of my sons called me up and said, Daddy, there's no more fighting going on because you lost half your friends. It was true. I really did. And every day I think about them and I think that they're missing. Some of them live in my neighborhood. And of course, we have availers from that. I can get into a crying about any one of them immediately. But we have to pull together. This was also part of Hashem's plan for whatever reason, and we have to accept it. Thank God we heard today, I hope it's true, Reb Chaim Kanievsky got through it, and he's okay, and he came back. Baruch Hashem. And we know we're going to face a lot more pain in the half year, whatever it is, that we still have to go through this. But remember, we are fish swimming under the sea, and we will get through this because we're Yidden, because we have Avas Yisrael, and because Hakol B'dei Shamayim, Chutz Me'yiras Shamayim. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosenshein, for those beautiful words, and Rabbi Morgenstern. And I think the key thing that we need to always remember is that everything can be a teachable moment. The times are tough, that's the reality. It's what we make of it that is what is going to be what our children will keep with them forever. So it's our job to make the best of it. Listen to what the great doctor said, play board games with your kids, do other interesting things, whatever it takes. But let's make sure to be there together. Okay, so we have questions coming in. The first question is for Dr. Rosenshein. Dr. Rosenshein, how do I plan my own obligations when I have no clue if I'll have my 6 kids home with me or not?
Well, as I said, flexibility. It could start off that 3 of them are home and 3 are not home, and it could all switch. We know there are schools that are completely closed and they got opened up all of a sudden, certain zones. I understand Torah V'das, Torah Tamima, because they're in the right zone, got opened up. I hope it's correct. So thank God. The others are still stuck home. We explain it to the children and we wait for the other schools to open up. We're living in a time of a pandemic. Remember, I didn't want to say this before because a lot of people say, well, thank God we forgot about the Holocaust. What are we facing as compared to what our grandparents faced? Those of us who lost everything. You know, I'm not called a child of the Holocaust because my parents were here from 25, but I lost everybody except 1 cousin, 2 cousins. And we forget about what they went through. And here we are facing this pandemic. It's difficult. We have to step up to it. Like our grandparents stepped up to it, whether they knew where they were going to end up or they didn't know. And that's the key. And you have to plan. Sometimes you have to call a neighbor, ask for some advice. Sometimes you have to call one of our 40 agencies, part of the United Task Force. We are there for you. We have all these agencies ready to help you. If you really get stuck, make a call. Find out who to call, and you'll get some telephone advice. We are here for you 24/7, literally.
Thank you, Rabbi Morgenstern.
I think the doctor said it all, but if I could just take a phrase that I heard from a great teacher, he said, you need to be rigidly flexible. That's what you got to be rigid about, your flexibility. And with that flexibility, you will be able to survive.
All right, so I actually heard a cute phrase to add to that called controlled chaos. You got to do the best you can to control it, but it's still chaotic. Okay, question for Rabbi Morgenstern. How do I cope with the roller coaster of different Zoom school schedules for multiple kids at the same time?
Just a note on Zoom, as when you're speaking to somebody, one of the things you like is you like to see the feedback. You see the facial expressions. Tonight, I'm speaking to a screen, and I don't see any facial expressions of anyone that's listening and watching. Dr. Rosenshein touched on the fact that the Rebbeim, the Moras, the teachers, who have been heroes through this entire crisis, are going through something that they've never experienced. They didn't train for this. They never wanted this. As much as you didn't want your children home, they want their children in the classroom. They have their own children at home. And here it is in a classroom, the Rebbe, the Mora looks at a child, and when they ask a question or when they teach and the eyes light up and you get that feedback and you have that connection. A Rebbe shared with me today that he's wearing a mask, and he says the difficulty of his situation is there's so much nonverbal communication that takes place in a classroom where you can have real conversations with a child without saying a single word, and the mask is interfering with that. So the Zoom schedules, the Rebbeim are suffering, the Moras are suffering because they're not getting that interaction with their Talmidim and Talmidos. And we have to bear that in mind that they are suffering too. They're incredible that they keep at it. But you as a parent with your Zoom schedules, try your best and don't get into fights over it is the time, it's not the time. That stress will do more harm than whatever they can gain in those lessons. It's difficult and it's hard to manage. You try your best and you see what's legitimately feasible for your house with your situation. Some homes, they have children that are able to go into different rooms with a desk and headphones, and everything's quiet, everything's wonderful. Other homes they're all sitting in one room with their headphones and there's interaction. You got to do what works best for you. And remember that the stability in your home and the harmony in your home is more important than whatever they're going to be learning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosenshein. Would you like to add to that?
Well, I just thought of something else, which I didn't mention before. Some children would like to keep a diary of this time. If they keep a diary, they may become authors when they become older. The history that we're living through is going to be something very important. So I would encourage children, first of all, they're writing, which is very good for them. They can make little notes. They can keep it a secret from mommy, make it into a good exercise. I think children would like that very much. So go out and buy a few diary books and give them each a present.
Thank you for that advice, Doc. Okay, the next question is for Dr. Rosenshein. How do I sleep at night not knowing if my child is going to have school the next day or not?
Well, first of all, know one thing. We all know this. If you don't sleep at night, you're going to be a wreck tomorrow. So how will you help the kids? So dealing with anxiety, putting anxiety out of your head so you can fall asleep is very, very important. If you need to count the sheep, so count the sheep. If you need to take some mild, very mild, whatever they sell over the counter, no drugs of any type, to help you fall asleep, do that. But you must fall asleep or you will not be able to be a mother or a father the next day. Number one. Number two, if you do have a bad night, we already addressed that. You will have to take a real siesta. You'll have to get your neighbor maybe to cover for you, and then you'll cover for her or for him, or you'll figure it out. Maybe you will be able to have a grandma in the neighborhood who's not afraid of COVID or had it already and help you out. Or maybe you'll even have to call in a high school girl to watch the kids for a while if you can, if she is safe. Do whatever you got to do, but you have to sleep because otherwise you will not be able to go through the day.
Thank you very much for that wonderful answer. Okay, the next question coming in is for Rabbi Morgenstern. Okay, and this is actually a question that I must say I personally had to address, but I'd love to hear your answer.
Who's going to let you answer it?
Oh no, that's why you're the expert. I get to moderate. How do I explain to my son that he has to go to school when my daughter gets to stay home because her school is closed, or vice versa? And I'm going to add to that question. It doesn't really have to be son and daughter, because as in my case, I have, my high school son was able to go to school and my elementary school children possibly not. So how do we explain that to our kids, Rabbi?
Good question. Life, I'm hoping the kids want to go to yeshiva. Not, other times you have a famous variation of this is, someone has 4 daughters and 1 son or 2 sons, and they all say, hey, how come the girls get to stay home on Sunday and we have to go to yeshiva? But I think that's changed. Baruch Hashem, everybody wants to get back to school, get back to yeshiva. So I think that's Baruch Hashem, something good that's come out of this. That there's a life's lesson here. Tzvi, you mentioned the teachable moments. There's a life lesson here that we should all be, here's a great chance to teach that fair and equal is not the same. We're not equal, we're not always getting the same. As we get older and we see not everyone has the same job, not everyone has the same pay, we're not equal, but it's fair. This one has this job, this one has his responsibilities, this one has his responsibilities and her responsibilities, and that's how it works. We would love, give us a heavy dose of empathy. You would love for the child to be able to return to yeshiva. You feel so bad that they're not together with their Rebbe or their Mora or with their friends and having that interaction that they're craving. But this is how, as the Rabbi Shalom has it worked out. And it's not always going to be equal, which is something we need to teach our children for the rest of their lives.
May I add something, Rabbi?
I'm about to ask you if you'd like to answer that.
Many times, as a special educator, we're faced with the problem of telling a parent, this is what you have to do for the special child. And the parent says, well, what about my other children? They don't agree that this child should get more rewards than them. And I always told them, and nobody ever came back and said I was wrong yet, that the brothers and sisters know this is a special child, and they know what he or she needs for them to grow and become fully workable as a child. The same thing goes here now too. You have to explain to the children who are going to school, who say, why I want to stay home, or the ones who are saying the opposite, why it's working this way or that way. Full information. The more information they have, the more comfortable they will be. And it goes back to what I was talking about when, God forbid, a grandparent dies, etc. You talk to the children based on their their age and their educational level, up to their level. And a very important point I forgot to mention before, never give more information than the child is asking. So if a child asks a question, you give a minimum answer. They ask you more, you give more, whatever the topic is. You keep going as long as they keep asking. If they stop, then you stop also. It's a very important rule in dealing with children who are asking questions which you really don't know if you should answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is for Dr. Rosenshein. Dr. Rosenshein, I'm embarrassed to admit it, but with all the stress that's going on, I find myself sneaking drinks in the middle of the day. What advice can you give me?
Throw the bottles out of the house immediately, and the next time you take a drink, call me so I can tell you to throw it away. Get a partner. That's the basis of how we work with all addictions. That's the basis of the 12 steps. You need a partner who will watch you, and that's how you get rid of that situation. It's most important. And you cannot, at the beginning, just control yourself.
Rabbi Morgenstern, would you like to pipe in on that answer? You could say no, that's fine.
Throw it out, throw it out. It starts as one little drink and it spirals out of control. No one ever started by drinking an entire bottle. It starts with one little sip.
I must add something, if I may, Rabbi. Many, many years ago, when I was in practice in Borough Park. One of the most famous Rebbes sent me a man who I happen to have known very well from a different point of view, whose wife threw him out because he was an alcoholic. And the Rebbe asked me to help him. The Rebbe got him a place to live, and the Rebbe got him a make-do job, and I was working with him psychologically. And thank God, after 3-4 months, we got him back to his family, and we got him back to a real job, et cetera, et cetera. A year later, I was a very young psychologist, and he called me and said, what should I do about the Seder that's coming up in terms of wine and grape juice? And I made a terrible mistake. I told him that he can drink a drop of the abacosis for each kos, check with your rabbi what's the minimum, and I was totally wrong. He went down the tube again, and we had to redo the entire process. I never forgot that terrible experience, the learning process. So you can't take a little sip. A little sip becomes a big sip. Once you are in that program, you must have a partner, and you must get rid of everything out of your house. And without that partner, the Yetzer Hara will beat you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosenshein. I'm just going to add to that as well, because this is something that we deal with on a daily basis at work by Amudim, is that the number one key is, if you notice it early on, seek help, wherever it may come from. Like Dr. Rosenshein said, either find a partner or be able to get yourself to a therapist or do whatever it takes. Okay, we have a few questions left. I know that, see, the time is running out. The next question is for Rabbi Morgenstern. My children are friends with the neighbor's children, and my child's school is in the red zone, so my 5-year-old cannot go to school. However, the other neighbors in our building attend a school that's in an orange or yellow zone. And it is very difficult for my daughter, and she is really having a very tough time not understanding why she can't go to school when her friends are all going. What is it that I should be telling her?
This is very similar to the other theme that we spoke about before, about that not everyone is going to get the same thing in life. Is that, once again, that fair is not equal, but you have to help your daughter, help her, and you should be empathetic to let her know that you too feel bad that she's not able to attend school. See, do you hear what we're saying? We're living through times where kids are feeling bad that they're not in yeshiva. Yeah,
by the way, I have to say, as an expert on education, because as you know, and Dr. Rosenshein knows, I think I went to more schools than anybody we know. I think a total of 18 between elementary and high school. This is an amazing time when my kids are begging me to go to school. So, Rabbi Morgenstern, I got to tell you, it's unbelievable.
Let's just tap into that and focus on how positive it is and how wonderful it is, and point out to your child how beautiful it is that she wants to attend and she wants to be back with everyone, and you're looking forward and you're davening as well that Amir Hashem, red should go to yellow, the Eibusher should bring a Yeshua, and that she should be able to once again be in school, be with her friends, learning Torah, and doing what we used to take for granted, what we used to call normal.
Dr. Rosenshein, would you like to answer that question before we move on?
Well, I got a very good answer. Switch schools. Get it to the other school. I think Rabbi Morgenstern answered it very well. I was just kidding around. A little humor to get me through the day.
Better than a little drink.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question is for Dr. Rosenshein. This is an interesting one also. You know, when there were occasional snow days, Doctor, we used to look forward to having drinks, hot cocoa with our kids, play in the snow, family bonding. However, now with COVID-19, as a mother, I dread the day when the email comes and they're telling me there won't be school tomorrow, or like we just had recently where my child's class is quarantined, so everyone else is there. I don't feel that family fun bonding time. I dread having my children at home. and I'm starting to have very negative feelings towards them. Please help me. What can I do?
It sounds to me like this is a person who should be taking advantage of our offer to get herself or himself to a clinician to talk about these feelings. If these feelings continue, then it's going to be a very big disaster for the whole family. It's very hard to answer it in general because it's an individual feeling. It's normal, but this person may need help to talk about it and talk it down. You can do this on a Zoom. You can do it on a telephone. All of us are available. And if they have trouble with the financing of it, please call and we'll arrange it for them somewhere.
Rabbi Morgenstern, you want to pipe in on that?
Beautiful, doctor. Beautiful.
Okay, and this is the last question for the evening before we close out. This is for Rabbi Morgenstern. During this time, we all know that routine has gone out the window. As a Rebbe, how much do we let our child get away with not doing their homework, wanting to stay up late, not wanting to stop playing a game? It's just as hard on them as it is on us. And many kids don't even remember what routine is anymore. My daughter is 8, and I feel that there's a lot of tension as I'm trying to get her to stay indoors, go to bed, be prepared. But I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't. What do you feel as a Rebbe is the right thing for me to do?
Little bursts of structure. Don't fight. It's not worth the fight because at the end of the day, you're going to just going to remember the stress and the fighting. That doesn't mean we let our kids be hefker. Parents have to be in control of the home, but pick your battles and make it manageable and find areas where you can, and have it. If it's an older child, you have the discussion. These are the parameters. Don't talk about bedtime at bedtime. Let them know in advance what your expectations are. Let them know what the routine is that you're expecting at night, that by this and this time, the game will be shut. By this and this time, showers will be done, and it's time for bed. But on the other hand, with the no fighting, it's okay to have a late night once in a while. It's okay to turn this into fun time. Homework, a little bit. They haven't done schoolwork really since March. Little bit at a time, little steps, little increments, little bursts, and slowly establish that little bit of structure, and you'll be able to build on that.
Many years ago, a woman came to me. She had 3 children, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and they were all bedwetting. And she didn't know what to do. I happened to ask her what their bedtimes were. And she told me, well, I try to get everybody in bed all together at 6 o'clock. I said, young lady, do me a favor. Do not pay me for this session. Go home and spread the bedtimes. Have your oldest daughter, the latest, the next one, and then the baby, of course, the earliest. And come back next week and let's see what happens. She came back next week and she said, how much money do you want? I'll give you anything you want. It worked. It's unbelievable. Because I separated the best time, I gave everybody their due, and the 2 oldest ones stopped the bedwetting.
Make it bedtime, not bad time.
Right.
Oh,
So very same thing applies here. You can switch nights, by the way, if you have 2 kids who are pretty close in age, but give everyone a different bedtime so that they have it 10 minutes or 15 minutes. By the way, husbands and wives, 15 minutes, let the wife talk about her day. Just listen to her. Don't give her advice. Listen. If you give her those 15 minutes, she will sleep at night and she will be ready for the next day. Most important.
Dr. Rosenshein, I appreciate that, except my wife is watching this, and now you're going to get me into trouble.
No, I'm not. You have to give her 15 minutes.
I don't know. I'm going to try. I really want to take this opportunity and thank everybody for joining this evening. And I'm going to spell out the website, www.unitedtaskforce.org. Again, that's www.unitedtaskforce.org. You will see a listing of all the member agencies in pretty much all of the 5 boroughs, and many of us We'll help people even if they're calling from anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter. We're here to help each other. We all have to take these lessons that we heard tonight and really internalize them. And the way I'm going to take this as a parent is understanding that this is just as hard on my children as it is on me. These are uncertain times for everybody. We have to confront it realistically. We have to give our children the chance to be children. And most important, we have to take all the lessons learned tonight and make them teachable moments so that our children can grow from this. And while these times will never be forgotten in history, but at least they will be looked at as the good times and not the bad times. With that, I wish everybody Hatzlacha. Dr. Rosenshein said it best in the beginning. Anyone that says they have the answers doesn't. We're all trying our best. May we all be zeicha to see the end of this pandemic very soon. And may we be zeicha to get ourselves back into a normal routine and to be able to see the Geula. Thank you all very much and have an amazing night.
Sleep tight.
Very nice.